used to be homeless, and it sucked. It was unpleasant, but it teaches you to push through. You can't be afraid of losing what you have, because losing what you have isn't what you want anyway. Like, yeah, but I gotta eat, I gotta pay rent. Okay, so here's my thing then. Go get yourself a storage shed, live in your storage shed, get yourself a gym membership, and shower at the gym, and put all your other effort into your dreams. Because the more you justify why you're not doing what you feel you should be doing, is what's going to kill your dreams. Your job as a man and as a warrior is to lean into the full potential and power that God put inside of you, to leave a legacy on this earth and an inheritance of the lifestyle and story that you live here for your grandchildren's grandchildren. My grandfather was not a rich man, but he left me an inheritance of the martial arts that allowed my dad to travel around the world and teach, and that allowed me to travel around the world to teach. I mean, the life that we live as men, it's not based, like, money comes based off the wealth within you, gentlemen. So what you have to be careful of is what you are programming in your mind and what you believe is real, because beliefs are very real. A simple fact of believing something will release chemical endorphins, cortisol, etc. into your body. And then in your body, now all of a sudden you're feeling this and experiencing it, and it's not real.
Let's kick it off. So for anybody who's new to this, who doesn't know about Manly Combos, so I'm Corey Cummins. I started Manly Combos a little under a year ago. The goal of Manly Combos is just to have conversations really to kind of help men. And we do this in a couple different ways with their mental health journey. So we talk to men who have had their own journey through mental health. We talk to mental health professionals. We talk to nonprofits, coaches, therapists, and really just try to give different ways for men to understand what's going on and to really work through things. So today I have Michael Johnson on today from Shockwave Warrior. So we're going to have an amazing discussion around how you can become a stronger, independent man. So we're really excited about it. So Michael, just to now just kind of kick off. So your journey really expands: elite military training, law enforcement, and self-defense. So what moment or experience really led you to this journey and to kind of help men?
I had a bunch of them. I had a bunch of different experiences in life. And I think primarily there are so many, God refines us through the crucible of pain and through suffering. And suffering is a choice, pain is not. So when you sit down and you start looking at the different types of events that have taken place just in my own life, from my childhood uh, to my youth to my adulthood, there's been a lot of different crucibles that I've been through. And what I saw is how many men struggle alone. They don't have somebody there. They don't have somebody that they can talk to, or they try to talk to their wife or maybe a girlfriend or whatever, and that person just doesn't know how to take it. And frankly, that's not really her role. So she's not supposed to be in that position per se, even though you'd love for your spouse to be your support. But there's so much agendizing going on, pushing in the opposite direction right now, that unfortunately removes a lot of men from being able to have that support. And I saw all these men alone. And then I saw a statistic that said 80% of suicides are men. And I was like, well, not cool. I want to do something about that. I want to be able to help with that. So I started structuring my program and the design of our program to be geared towards helping men survive in high risk and high stress environments, but also teaching good men how to be dangerous to bad men. And I think that that's not only something that helps them, but it helps their spouse as well, because women do look for a man that can protect them. Makes sense. Anthropologically, we're wired that way. But my drive is to how to make the world better by the way you make the world better is by making men better.
No, yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And there's some really interesting things about your background. I remember when we first spoke, you were saying your grandfather got jujitsu, and then your dad was trained by Bruce Lee, and then you got trained, and then you went into criminology and all these different things. Can you give kind of a little background on, kind of your journey? Because it's pretty interesting and different.
Yeah, our lineage in our family. My grandfather, Samuel K. Johnson, he fought in the war, and he was born back in the 20s, so it was a pretty racist time. And being a young black man back in the 20s was not easy, especially when his mother and father took off and left him and his sister, and they abandoned him. And from what I recall from the stories my parents told me, they were sitting there and his sister's crying, and she's like, I don't know what we're going to do. We've got nowhere to live. And at the time he's like 12, and she, I think, was 14. And he said, no, we're not going to lose anything. And he quit school and went out and got a job. And the only thing that he did for himself was the martial arts. And he got a black belt in judo and jujitsu. He died before I was born. And then he raised my dad and started teaching him martial arts at 12 years old. And my dad became a black belt, I think around 16 or 17 under my grandfather's system, which was the Jinsen Do Kung Fu. And then my dad pursued the martial arts and kept studying the martial arts. And he was in Seattle, and he was training at a school with a gentleman named James Lee. And James said, hey, we got a special guest coming in tonight. And nobody really knew who it was. And this guy comes in and kicks the bag and shakes the entire building. And my dad looks over and it's Bruce Lee. And at the time, Bruce Lee was not as big as he is now, right? Like he really got big after he died, after the filming of Enter the Dragon. But what happened was my dad walks over because James calls him over, and my dad's sitting there very proud as a martial artist at this time. I think he had like 6 different black belts in different systems or something. And he says, hey, show us your kick. And my dad does a kick and he's all proud. And he goes, man, imagine if he could actually kick like us. And so my dad's ego just kind of went down, right? And my dad was fascinated with Bruce Lee, and then he ended up training under him. Bruce said, hey, I'm headed back to California tonight. And my dad said, so am I. And he quit his job and stopped everything and went and trained with Bruce. After Bruce died, my dad flew out to China to train with Yip Man, but he died before he got there. So he ended up training with Yip Chung. And then after a year there, my mom was like, I'm not living in China. Pick China or pick me. So my dad's like, all right, we're leaving. So they moved back to the US. And by that time, all these schools had popped up all over the place. So they said, you know, we're going to build a school in Virgin Territory. So they moved to New Mexico and in Albuquerque. And then that's where, you know, I was born, and I ended up just picking up the martial arts. Had kind of a crazy life myself, starting out like having a knife to my throat at 5 years old, and this person telling me you're going to slit my throat and stuff my body behind the television so my parents couldn't find me. And that affects your head a little bit. And then and then you kind of sit down and you look at life differently. The lens is differently. You know what it's like to truly feel helpless and to not feel like you can actually protect yourself. And that is a horrible feeling. And it affects every aspect of your life inside of a lifetime, in spiritual, emotional, physical, financial, etc. And experience is what creates paradigms and creates belief systems. So it was through some of those different experiences that I started realizing, you know, God kept me safe, but I also understand that like he will allow us to be exposed to things so that we can actually dive deep into them, integrate that as part of our structure and our design and our identity. We have to be careful not to let it become too much of our identity. But the short version is that got me very interested in studying combatives and warfare. And at the time I was in high school, and I'd go to the library and I'd start studying. Well, I mean, as I got older, because my parents got divorced when I was, I think, 10 or 12 or whatever. And I just kind of full bore went into martial arts and just really dove into it. And I started studying counterterrorism and guerrilla warfare and all these different things that like a normal 14-year-old probably does not study. But I was so fascinated by it because it was literally like, what is the mind of a person like this? How do people go into a village with people who have never trained before in their lives and teach them how to fight in 2 and 3 days? And it was this huge level of, for lack of a better word, social engineering that they would utilize to actually befriend the people of that village. And then they would teach very short, very simplified tactics that teach them how to get to the next level. And then in 2 days, they would fight off an army who had military training. And it just fascinated me. And so I was like, okay, and what's the power behind a terrorist? What makes them so effective? And it's their conviction. And so the more I got into that, I started getting into, you know, at the time it didn't have the name that it has now, but I started really getting fascinated by metaphysics and neurology and things along those lines. So I left and went to college, got a degree in criminology and political science, and came out, opened my school. For lack of a better phrase, I'm skipping some of the story because some of it, like we got an hour here, right? So I opened up my own school, was really fascinated with martial arts, but I'm always interested in pushing myself to a deeper level. And what I found with most martial arts is that most of it's nonsense. It's garbage. It doesn't work. I mean, you get the guys like in Muay Thai that are super effective. Jiu-Jitsu can be effective under the right context, like if you're fighting one-on-one or you're a cage or stuff like that. But a lot of this stuff, it starts to fail under real pressure, like when you have multiple opponents or weapons involved, or you're fighting in the back seat or in the front seat of a car, or etc. So what I started looking at was, how can we make this more effective? I went through one of those other experiences where I went through an experience of infidelity and was dealing with my own heart at that time, being like, man, this really sucks. You know, there's a lot going on. And I had an instructor at the time, Felix Valencia from Valencia Escrima, and he came out to work with me on some stick stuff. And he's all, dude, you seem angry. And I was like, well, that's because I'm angry, right? And he's like, look, man, there's a group of guys and they fight with sticks and chains and bull whips, and there's no rules and no judges and no refs. And if you want, you can go fight these guys. And I'm like, and I won't go to prison? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I'm in. So I freaking went, and we went to a few of their gatherings, and then we had our own. And I think I had at the time like 55 underground fights under my belt at the time, and just loved it. And then the first group we took out, all of them, they were guys and girls. We took them out there, and some of them never been in a fight before in their life.
Sure.
And we said, look, we're going to teach you guys some stuff. We're going to teach you a different way of thinking. And we're going to take you out to fight these guys, and they're going to basically try and kill you. And you have to utilize what we're teaching you in real time. And I think we had like 6 weeks. And some of the people came in at 3 weeks. And we took them out, and they were destroying people.
Mm.
And it was awesome. And the things that we utilized with psychology and neuroplasticity and utilizing isochronic and binaural tones and embedding messages inside of the subconscious so that they actually believed in themselves. You start to understand the power of belief, right? Like these guys were going against people who had been doing this for years and decades, and they were just pounding straight through them. And I was like, yeah, because it works in real time. And that's what I've always wanted. Like, you can't tell an attacker, hey, can you come back in 20 weeks, right? They're there. You're dealing with them. They don't take rain checks. So you have to be able to give somebody something quickly. And so we started taking our tactics and our training and the mindset that we utilized and driving it down to the point where we are now, where we can make you dangerous in a day. And that was something that meant a lot to me. Like, how do we take the world and make the world safer and teach them how to not be a victim? And so I got approached by one of my students who was in the 512th Rescue Squadron. And he said, hey, can you do me a favor? I'd love to have you meet my colonel. And I went out and I met the colonel, and he's like, we'd like to have you as an honorary commander of the 512th Rescue Squadron. And I was like, that's dope. I'm down. So I met him, and then I became the honorary squadron commander for the 512th Rescue Squadron. And then from there, I think I went to Japan and trained the 459th Airlift Squadron. And then from there, I had some kind of setup with the Ecuadorian Special Forces and the defense minister's bodyguards and their Navy SEALs and their Marines, and went out there and trained all of them. And then went to South Africa and trained the tactical response team in South Africa. And then came back and trained the SEER school for the United States Air Force up in Fairchild. And we just kept simplifying the system and teaching it and making it easier and easier and easier. And these hacks that work in combat, they work in every single area of life, right? The same way you go against an opponent on the outside is the same way you go against an opponent on the inside. Most men struggle with certain things that make them feel inadequate. They feel like they don't have value, whether that's finances or their spirituality or control of their emotions. And look, we all struggle. I still struggle with that from time to time, right? Like your emotions and you're just controlling things inside of yourself, especially depending on the partner that you have in a relationship, that can become more difficult. But we also have conditioning that we have to infiltrate inside of our own minds, both our heads and our hearts and our bodies, right? Conditioning is not just for the body. It's a psychosomatic approach. You've got to do all of it, right? So that is my not so short Reader's Digest version of my history.
No, that's perfect. Well, something we spoke about, however many weeks ago that was, and this is something I think we can all relate with, depending on your age, or certain things might impact you more than others, is that there's certain functional things that men really struggle with, whether it's marriages, financing, losing relationships, kids, whatever it be. And remember we were having our conversation is that, obviously men can potentially commit suicide for different reasons, but a lot of times when men get older, it's because of these functional things that happen in life, like I just stated. And this is something that I know you really try to focus on around how to help men get through these things. But how are you seeing these things actually impact men? So, like, what is it that you're noticing when these things kind of arise and stuff like that?
Well, I think there's a couple of tools I'd give the audience, right? Like, men, the reason that they're struggling and the reason that they're suffering is not because of what's actually happening. That's not what's causing them pain. What's causing them pain is the lens in which they're looking at it, the lens in the way that they choose to perceive it. Suicide's never an option. Suicide is an extremely permanent decision for a very temporary problem. So when men start thinking, man, I'm going to check out, it's because they are thinking that the experience that they're having right now is going to last forever. And it's not. Feelings are temporary. They happen briefly and they go away. And they good and bad, right? So one of the things I would encourage the men to do and to start understanding is that experience is contrived through 4 V's: the vision, the voice, the visceral, and the vibration. The vision are the mental imageries that you have inside of your mind, any kind of media, sounds, etc. And then there's the voice. The voice is your internal dialogue. Oftentimes, an internal talking that speaks to you in a familiar voice, whether it's a parent's voice or even your own voice, but it doesn't necessarily give you positive messaging. So you sit down in this messaging and you're going, it's telling you you're stupid or you're fat or you're a loser and you're never going to meet another woman like that again, or you're never going to have somebody. And right, and I'll say most of the time, the threat's never outside of you. And I'm learning this more and more even in my own life. It may appear to be outside of you, but all things that manifest on the outside, it's because they exist on the inside as a threat. So if I sit down and I have a threat on the inside of my heart, if somebody's, and it appears as a threat and I think I need to engage it, oftentimes that's the time to just let it go, right? Like you have to let things walk away if they keep wanting to move away from you. That's not what your real threat is. Your real threat is the issues you're dealing with on your inside of your heart, your abandonment issues, your suffering, whatever it is that is causing you pain. This is the opportunity to have the environment that you can now exercise that through. If I fight an opponent, I'm never going to get better if I fight people less than me. I only get better when I'm in environments that are greater than what I think I can take. Now, and when you do that and you get into the 4 Vs, and I go into this in much more detail in my Uncaged Masterclass, which I was telling you about, like when you dive into that and you start understanding that, you start understanding, man, okay, the pictures in my head, that's what's causing me to suffer. Okay, the vision, that's the pictures in my head, the voice, the way I talk to myself. And what about the vibration? What is your energy like? How are you carrying yourself? Like most, again, as men, we're very logical. So we try to outthink the pain that we're feeling. And all that does is it actually drives you deeper into the pain. And there's these things called Limitless that will pull you into their orbit, right? Everything that lives must eat something that's living. So if I sit down and I go, well, I eat living things to stay alive. Well, what if there was a world that existed that we couldn't see past this realm? And these creatures, these entities, these energies, they fed on either sorrow, suffering, pain, etc., or they fed on joy, happiness, whatever, and they consume that. And that when you're suffering, they try to create more suffering because it nourishes them. So the dark ones, they try to pull you into their orbit and keep you in your orbit and keep you in pain. Your job as a man is to not allow that to happen. So these things that are outside of us, that put thoughts inside of your head or try to put emotional frequencies inside of you to make you not be the man that you're supposed to be. Because when we start thinking thoughts, what happens to our energy? It goes down. We have to, as men, level up and get to the next level of strength and power that allows us to actually resonate in an energy that is nurturing for us and for the people around us. You take a magnet, you rub it against a nail, what happens?
I completely agree. When you were saying that, you can't work out without resistance, that really kind of resonated with me because, yeah, I lost my mother when I was 25, and I've had other experiences in life, whether, I had my own business and my business partner and I had a pretty bad, kind of, if you want to call it, breakup. And that's how I identified. And then I've had other experiences with, breaking up with partners, and every time is actually, when I went to seek help, whether it was through coaching or, therapy or whatever it be, there's many ways to kind of seek help. And those are the times that I saw the most learning and the most improvement is when I was like, okay, I can't let this kind of take me down and really have to use this to kind of help me learn more about myself. Because as you said, you think you kind of conquer one part of your life and then the next stage happens in your life, whether it's, who knows, it could be meeting someone, getting married, having chills, starting a new job, could be starting a business, could be retirement, could whatever it is. There's always something that you kind of have to figure out how to work around. Yeah, I think I really like that quote, the way you said it. I wrote it down.
And then I would encourage you to go into fasting, right? Because fasting is one of those things that the body starts to change its actual design while you're going into fasting. And as you're sitting there in fasting and you're going through it and you're feeling the hunger, you start realizing that this inside of here is what you're struggling with, not what's out here. And the more you can create that as being the preference of your focus and your attention, because attention and focus is like a spotlight. If you look at negative, you'll get more negative. If you look at positive, you'll get more positive. This is why relationships fail, right? Because they don't look at the good times. They're fixated on the negative. They fixate, no, I can't unhear that. I can't unsee that. You can actually. You just have to quit being a little bitch, right? Like you got to actually pull yourself out of that position and you got to sit down and go, dude, I will fight for this no matter what. I will continue no matter what. I will stay in it no matter what. Because when I focus on what is right and I put my attention there, I will fall deeper in love with you, because all of the bad experiences that happen, those are actually just, it's like the weight. that you're lifting, right? It's the things that you learn to get past that make you fall deeper in love with that person. Bad experiences that you get through create stronger bonds than a perfect relationship.
Totally.
So when you sit down and you can leverage those times as training exercises, it builds you as a man and as a warrior, right? And the same with the women, right? We function differently as men and women. But I think what's so important here inside of understanding these stacks is the fasting is part of it, to learn how to suffer by choice and not by accident, right? Because pain is going to happen in life no matter what. But if you pick your pain, you get to own the moment. My morning, I'll give you a great example of my morning. I got up this morning, I did my walk, I did my meditations, I did my breath work, and then I went and got in the cold plunge. The cold plunge is like 38 degrees, 39 degrees. It's uncomfortable. I'm not going to show that on my face. I'm not going to allow there to be an explicit observation that somebody can look at me and see that I'm uncomfortable, because the more I discipline that, the more I can discipline getting comfortable being uncomfortable, I can be the man that God called me to be, because now feelings aren't affecting me at the same level. And we're not always going to do good at this, guys. Like, you're going to get in arguments with your wife and she knows just how to push your buttons. And it's going to be something simple. She's going to be like, you're just like your dad. And you're like, fuck, right? And you're like just so angry. And you sit down and like, those are the moments of exercise, right? And you hope as couples that you don't do that to each other, but that's just part of human nature. That's who we are as people. We're going to hurt each other unintentionally. But at the end of the day, learning how to suffer well is what builds you into a stronger warrior financially, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So that stack, I'd say prayer, meditation, get seed oils out of your diet. They're literally poison. They're killing us.
You'd make my girlfriend really happy right now by saying that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they're horrible for you. They're horrible for you.
I know.
Having a better diet, right? Learning how to meditate. Sitting there for an hour and telling yourself you're not going to move is really uncomfortable. But that's the exercise. People, I can't do that because I can't sit still. You actually can. You're just undisciplined. And the more you learn to discipline the things that are uncomfortable and you get comfortable being uncomfortable, you can step into the power and might of who you are as a human being. But see, we're so scared to sit still. And you know why? Because we're not facing ourselves. We won't drive without music. We won't go home without the television on. And we keep distracting ourselves from the one thing that you really have to face, that if you overcame that, you could become everything you wanted to be as a man or a woman. Because I know you have women in your audience. You face you and you face your weaknesses, and then you overcome it. And there's a lot of things lately that I have just been sitting in, and it sucks, right? Like, you just sit there and you're just like, all right, this is uncomfortable. How do we get through this?
So with that, one of the things you've said that I've read is that, you say fear is not a weakness, it's actually an asset, as long as you can kind of reprogram your mind. And it's kind of on like what you're saying here is there's all these things you're saying you can do. There's meditation, there's therapy, cold plunge, whatever it is. But I'm sure that there's people potentially listening like, okay, these things are great, but is there really kind of an approach that someone could take to really kind of going about reprogramming themselves through this? Because I feel like a lot of things you're talking about are things to do, but, kind of giving someone something to really kind of understand an approach to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the first thing is have a daily routine. You should have a daily routine, a weekly routine, and a monthly routine. And those types of things will help you in every aspect of your life. The first thing you got to start with is intentionality. The hard part is that a lot of people allow the day to happen to them. The day does not happen to me. I happen to the day. Being intentional is deliberate, right? You set a target. And part of this is like, men have been cultivated to stop being men. But the reality is we need to be predators in a good way. Right. And when a predator has something, no predator in the jungle sits there and waits with its mouth open, hoping that some food's going to fall into it. Like, you got to take action. And so you have a plan, you have a strategy, you hunt, you execute, you go get it. And so that intentionality inside of our, I just gave you a thumbs up again. And the intentionality inside of
just doing a great job.
The intentionality inside of our world as men is like, we have to have a target first thing in the morning. And there's something, and you can probably speak about this even more so than I can, but the reticular activating system, it has a tendency to start to fixate on what it notices and believes to be true. So you have a faculty within your body. Oftentimes as men, we think we have to manage everything outside of us. But if you can't manage what's inside of you first and foremost, you can't manage what's on the outside. So the things like your thoughts, your internal dialogue, your mindset that you go into any kind of like mission with, you have to start getting into that and stepping into that with authority and then commanding it. It's not a request. So you give yourself maybe 3 requests in the morning. First thing, as soon as you wake up, show me 2 ways today that I can make more money and increase my finance. Give me 3 ways that I'm going to be more intentional inside of my outreach today. And show me 3 ways that I can actually bring people back to God and bring them closer to God. It's not a wish. You're not asking. You're demanding this of your reticular activating system, your RAS, and you are demanding that it's going to happen. There's a difference between in energy between a wish and a command, right? A wish is like, I hope that one day I'll have a good family and, I'll make money and I'll do this. And, okay, great. Probably not going to happen with that attitude. A command is, I will make this happen and this is going to happen. Members of my faculty within me, you did a really great job yesterday guarding my heart, guarding my mind, guarding all the aspects of what I asked you to. You guys did well. Now you're going to serve me again today. This is our mission today. Here's our target. Go. And so that starts with that initial intentionality. And then what you do right after that is you do some mental rehearsals. You should be visualizing for maybe 3 minutes. So if you say, hey, I want to have the perfect partner, you should be visualizing what that woman looks like. And then it's important to understand what kind of man you have to be in order to get that. But it's also important for women to have that same reality, right? Like a woman has to understand in her head, what kind of woman do I have to be? I had a call with a lady a little ways ago, and I'm a men's coach, right? So I teach men how to become unstoppable mentally and physically in every aspect of their life. And the lady gets on the phone and she's all, I know you only work with men, but I'd like you to work with me. And I said, okay, well, what is it you're looking for? She's all, I want to have the perfect man. I said, what kind of woman do you have to be in order to get the perfect man? She goes, well, I don't think I should have to change anything. If he loves me, he'd love me for me. And I was like, that's why you're fucking single, right? Like you're not thinking right. Like you have to be willing to be better. You have to be willing to grow. You have to be willing to step up. You have to be willing to level up, because if you don't, what's going to happen? You're going to expect everybody to shift for you. Like a man can't do that, and neither can a woman. We are valued based off the worth we bring into a relationship. We are valued based off of how much we give to each other. Period. So if we sit down and go, oh, you should just love me for me. Dude, you don't even love you for you. No person likes themselves all the time. And then you expect somebody else to? That's not going to work. So we have to be in a constant state of that mental rehearsal of not only what we want, but also how do we need to be to get there. And we see ourselves in that. Okay. Next thing throughout the day is that you have to have pattern recognition so you can have pattern interruption. What are all the negative things that are going on inside of your life that pop into your head that take you down a negative energy shift? Like energy is a real thing. And that's where the vibration comes from. We talked about the vision, the voice, the visceral, and the vibration. The vibration is the energy that you resonate at. When you get around somebody, if they're like, well, I don't know, I just, life is kind of hard, like you start resonating, that frequency entrains you. Proximity is power. Get a good group of people around you. Resonate at a high level. I told you, you heard my call earlier. One of the things I found out about pilots is that they typically resonate at a high frequency. Why? Because they're literally hovering above everyone else. 90% of their lives, they fly, right? And that's what I love about flying, is that when you're up there and you're looking at everything, you're just like, dude, I remember when I used to be homeless and I was eating soggy Subway sandwiches out of the backseat of my Saturn SC2 coupe. I hate Saturns now. And I'm not a big fan
totally
of
forgot about
Subway
that car brand.
Yeah, it was like I was living out of my car and I was eating soggy Subway sandwiches. And now, like, my biggest challenge is finding a place to put my helicopter. Like it's a crazy shift, and it's not money. Money's never the issue. There are so many arguments over money inside of relationships, but money's not the problem. Mindset is the problem, and the energy in which you resonate at, and your ability to believe in yourself as a man and freaking go get it and go make it happen. And this is one thing that I had mentioned last week to an individual. Is they were like, well, you always find a way to do this. They were meaning a derogatory way. And I was like, yeah, man, that's me. I always find a way to do what I want to do. If I want something, I go get it. I don't wait for it to fall upon my lap. I believe God made us in his image. He made us godlike. If you look at stars, 97% of what is inside of stars is inside the human body. God literally took the universe and made mankind out of it. And then he breathed his divine spirit inside of us. You're the universe incarnate with a divine spirit breathed inside of you. What's beyond you? And we're called to act a certain way. So when you act helpless and you be a victim, that's a problem. And that's why being able to be dangerous physically, that's important. But look, if you're just really good at being dangerous physically, and then you sit down and you're like, but I can't make money, you're still weak.
or you can't control your emotional mental state, you're still weak.
Correct. If you can't control your mind, you're still weak. Learning how to fight is one element of what we do at Shockwave Defense. And why? Because you should be able to protect yourself and the people around you. But here's a really important clue that's really, really important. You should be able to be happy too, right? Like, and this is something I've really been leaning into lately, and actually getting some of my own coaching on it is not my own coaching, but coaching to me from someone else. It's just like, I have this part of me that's like a little boy. I love that part of me. Like, I'm giggly, I have fun, I crack jokes. And I'm like, but then I need to be able to turn on this warrior side. And I realize it's not, if I got to turn it on, it's not, it's two different personalities. I'm Michael Johnson. I am a warrior, and I will hit you in the throat while reading a book on poetry and having a sandwich, right? Like, I'm okay doing both. And I think that's what's so significant for us as men, is that we've got to have our warrioristic side with our playful side there at the same time, because that's what gives us power. It's being the true full version of yourself, the full spectrum of the true warrior self. And that comes about by being a master in spirituality, your consciousness and your connectedness with God, learning how to actually manage relationships better, look, they're hard, dude. And there's only so much you can do, especially if you're in a relationship and somebody's like a conflict avoidant and their whole thing is just like leaving, right? And then you have the other people that are like, they just can't handle things. And everybody's different. It doesn't make them good or bad. They just need to be aware that that exists so that they can actually manage it and avoid doing it so it doesn't cause long-term problems. It's actually a concept called third level thinking. When you start thinking, like most people, they function at one level, right? They sit down and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to think about what's right now. When you need to think about what's right now, you need to think about the consequences of what you're going to do. And you need to think of the consequences of those consequences on the world around you. That's third level thinking. When you do that, you can actually start getting into a model where you can build stuff out using stuff like, say, the OODA loop that the Air Force colonel developed, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. When you start doing this throughout your day and you have this part of your mental rehearsals and you start understanding that there's like, everything isn't a threat to me, there's opportunities there, but I need to be able to have that pattern recognition. So I know when a threat's present and I know when an opportunity is present. I can step into this and I can interrupt this and stop it from happening. That's where your mental health as a man becomes even stronger.
Well, on that topic, my therapist, actually, my latest therapist gave me, there's this technique called the ACT technique, which is basically when something comes into your head, because it happens to us all the time, whether good or bad, but especially bad, instead of ruminating in it, just continuing to let it kind of go in circles, it basically allows you to kind of recognize it, do breath work, and then it kind of helps you kind of get back into the present. And it's such a basic thing, but it's really interesting. And it also helps you understand where does it impact you in your body. So you're like, oh, I'm feeling this is happening. I'm feeling this, breath work. And then you kind of come back into it by looking at some things. And it's amazing how it helps. Cause I was struggling with that with certain things with work and other things outside of life where I'd be at something that I should be enjoying, a concert, whatever it be. And I would be thinking about something else. And I was like, this is not, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And so, not that that's the only way to do things, but it's kind of like what you're talking about. But I think that's where a lot of people really struggle. They're all like this all day long, just thinking on the same thing over and over and over again.
They're doing
And it's
four
like,
things. They're doing four things. They ruminate, they imaginate, right? So ruminating, they keep going over it in their head. Imagination is like a maladaptive thing. They're like, but only if this person would call me, if they could just recognize, if they could just see, if they could just, they're not gonna, right? That's a maladaptive imagination. Okay. The next that we look at is speculation. We start getting into our heads and going, what if the person did that? Or what happens if, and they start going through speculation. And then the fourth, which is perhaps the most destructive, is that they get involved in interrupting. They interrupt the pattern. They keep trying to create it. Now, as men, we need to be men of action because fear is not our enemy. Inaction is our enemy as men. You got to learn to take action. But when it comes to somebody else, when you're with yourself and bettering yourself, you got to always take action. When it comes to someone else, what I've realized is sometimes I get in the way of God's work. I keep trying to save somebody from something that I'm not supposed to be saving them from. That's not my responsibility. And I jump in and I intervene. I have rumination, imagination, speculation, and intervening. And then when I do that, I not only create pain for that person because I'm making them miss the mission that God's got for him, that he's going to create pain for him in whatever way he's going to do to help them understand something, not because God hates them or he's going to strike them down, but he wants them to learn a lesson. And like I said, pain is our fire. It's the crucible. That's what helps purge the impurities out of us and helps us grow. But when we do this all day, especially what you were saying in relationships or inside of a job, we are living in an imaginative world that doesn't really exist. And our reticular activating system starts to believe that that's the truth. And then it'll help you see more of that. It's like when you buy a car and now all of a sudden you notice that car everywhere. That's the RAS at work. Because now that you have one, you start noticing they exist because you believe it to be true. So what you have to be careful of is what you are programming in your mind and what you believe is real, because beliefs are very real. A simple fact of believing something will release chemical endorphins, cortisol, etc., into your body. And then in your body, now all of a sudden you're feeling this and experiencing it, and it's not real. So as men, we have to be very careful on what we are building out, because when we build, and we build like warriors, and we build in truth, what will actually take place is that we will go from being circumstances, these victims of circumstances, to actually being what's real. Circumstances belong to men. Without fear, what would you attempt?
Yeah, that's true.
And then you get these guys that jump in and they go, yeah, but fear is good to let you know that there is an insecurity inside of you or something that is an indicator of a potential threat. That's it. Other than that, if it's present, it's using you. And something's feeding on you because you're feeding it. But what fear becomes is really a place for men to hide and not take action, to overthink things, to keep from acting on things and behaviors that they know that they should.
It's an easy way to be a victim.
Well, and they don't even like being called a victim, right? They're like, I'm not a victim. I'm a victim sometimes if I choose to allow myself to be, but I don't like that. And I don't want that identity. So what I choose instead is to take action. Within 5 seconds of you having hesitation, you should move. If you're like, dude, I really want to invest in this program, or I really want to invest in coaching, or I really want to invest in buying that helicopter or that car or whatever that is, but I'm afraid that maybe I can't sustain it, you should probably do it. Because now you're in a position where you can't help but to succeed, and you're going to be forced to figure it out or you're going to fail. Our society teaches a lot of this stuff. And this is what I don't like about a lot of the business coaches out there. They're like, be smart and be intelligent and make everything. Like, dude, how did everybody feel in 2018 versus 2019? They had 5-year plans. And like that, all of that went to hell in a handbasket. You don't know what the future is going to hold. So what I encourage people to do is to invest in themselves. That's the ultimate asset. You can invest in the house and the market can shift and drop. You can invest in cars and it can go through the toilet. You can invest in yourself and it never depreciates, because that knowledge keeps growing and it keeps stacking itself and building. And this is why men have to learn how to become uncaged. They have to stop holding themselves inside of their own jail cells. And you know what the bars are? Your beliefs, your thoughts. You have indoctrinated as truth. And oftentimes not even by people who meant to give you any ill will, like your parents. They're like, you need to save. You need to put your money in the bank. Why would you do that? You're going to earn 1%? You want to diversify. You want to put your money in things like commercial real estate that are going to increase sales and blow through the roof, right? Because even in bad times, commercial real estate typically still does good. Put money inside of investing, inside of how to train yourself, how to be somebody who's unstoppable. When you're unstoppable, nobody can break you. And brother, people have been trying to break me my whole freaking life. All you got to do sometimes is just look through the comment section of some of the videos that we post on Instagram, and you see how many people have envy, and they're like, I'll kick this guy's ass. And you're like, at a point in my life where I've done so much and I've experienced so much, I don't feel the need to respond to 98% of those, because the reality is there's only stages of losing at some point in your life. Like if you took somebody like Bones Jones, right, out of Albuquerque, and some guy tells him he's a bitch on an airplane, and he stands up and he's like, I'm not a bitch, and he lets that get to him, and he decides to fight this guy. He only has layers of losing.
Yeah.
If he wins, the guy sues him. If he loses, he ruins his reputation. So part of us as men is learning how to manage our own feelings and our own identities so that people can't manipulate us so quickly. And you will get manipulated by women. You'll get manipulated by men. You'll get manipulated by people around you. Your job is to make sure that the real manipulation is going on by you. You are getting brainwashed all day long, whether you know it or not. If I say, da, 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 what do you think?
I don't even know what that would be.
That song, if you've watched TV for any amount of time, was McDonald's song. And they would always
Oh
follow
yeah.
it with da-da-da-da, I'm loving it. You're getting
Oh
brainwashed.
yeah. Said I'm loving it. I got McDonald's. I was like,
So you said, I don't eat McDonald's. So, but at the same time, like when you look at that and you put in your head, man, I'm getting brainwashed all day long. What if I actually brainwashed myself to be better?
totally.
What if I wrote things on my mirror in the morning, these messages that I'm giving to myself so I have that predator instinct, so I have a target to go after? What if I sat down and wrote, give me 3 things today to do this? I am a strong, powerful warrior man. I am unstoppable. My thoughts belong to me, not me to them. And you wrote these out on a dry erase on your mirror. If you looked at my mirror right now, you'd think I was insane.
There's also a lot of people that say that when you're actually not even just that, but if you take it one step further, say you're having a negative thought, is to actually write down the thought and what's going on and why, and that actually also helps you kind of process it and kind of take that step forward. Is because like when you write it down, a lot of times you're like, this is crazy that I'm thinking this.
Journaling
Lot of
is,
friends journaling. I've never
yeah,
actually got into journaling, but I have a lot of friends who love
dude,
journaling.
I journal every day,
Mm,
twice a day. And I like doing it. I don't like writing down the negative things because I feel like that embeds it into the subconscious. But what I will do is counter it with its positive and then
mm.
write all the reasons that the positive is true. See, the negative we believe to be true, but it's not. What's true is what we create. And that is the gift of being a godlike creature. We have to be careful what we allow other people's garbage to get in our head, because people will tell you their agenda and they will control you, and they'll hijack your amygdala, they'll hijack your RAS, and they'll go, this is what you should believe and here's why. And it serves their purpose, but it doesn't serve yours, right? And so you've got to stop being a victim. And the only way to do that is to get in action. Start taking action. Stop letting old stories of the past control you. Your stories are not your identity. Your relationships are not your identity. The only real currency, if you really look at it, is energy and your beliefs and your faith and love. But you cannot love anybody else if you don't love yourself. And you can't love yourself if you can't handle those alone times of deep diving in and dealing with those demons. And well, I gotta do that. If you
It
and
technically goes well with what you're saying.
I guess are important, but not to the level that you're giving them where it's making you lose your sleep and you lose your identity and you lose who you are as a man, to the fact that you start thinking that you're not significant anymore. Every single man watching this right
I've
now,
been
brothers,
there.
I'm gonna tell you guys something. You're made in the image of God. You were designed for greatness. You could do great and terrible things. And what you have to do is you have to step into it to a level where you are so strong, you are so powerful, that you choose to ignore the negative thoughts that people try to embed inside of your head, because you will never believe anybody's voice on the outside stronger than you will listen to and believe the voice that comes from internally. So your master craft is to learn to speak to yourself in such a way that it always lifts you up and you don't have to get the external validation in order for that to take place, because when you do, somebody else has control of the keys. Your job as a man and as a warrior is to lean into the full potential and power that God put inside of you, to leave a legacy on this earth and an inheritance of the lifestyle and story that you live here for your grandchildren's grandchildren. My grandfather was not a rich man, but he left me an inheritance of the martial arts that allowed my dad to travel around the world and teach, and that allowed me to travel around the world to teach. I mean, the life that we live as men, it's not based, like, money comes based off the wealth within you, gentlemen. You guys are the money.
Mm.
You guys are the wealth. So don't let anybody on the outside tell you who you are or what you're capable of, because when they start doing that, you lose the power that you hold within. And that there's so much power in being strong. We have to stop being victims as men. We got to stop being weak as men. We need to lean into our power. And that's why I actually did that free live masterclass. It's not live anymore, it's recorded, but I did this
Yeah, I was
free
about to ask you
masterclass
what
because
is the Uncaged Masterclass? I was about to ask you about that.
it goes through a lot of what we just talked about, and it deep dives into being a man of action and actually stepping into how to control your thoughts and how to control your emotions. And then it talks about how to be a true warrior, right? And then also when we talk about being uncaged, we start realizing that the cage is us. How do we get out of us And how do we level up? Because there's three parts to every man. There's the low frequency, the mid frequency, and the high frequency. Most men resonate between low and mid frequency. You are not called to do that. You are called to be maybe at mid frequency to high frequency, but we get scared because of energy expectation. We come in and we feel super authoritative and we feel excited.
How do you define what's low, mid, and high frequency? What does that actually mean?
And an easy way to look at that is like at your lowest bestial state, what does that look like? And for a lot of men, that's them masturbating, porn addictions. All they care about is food, sports. And I think that's like low frequency, when all your thing is like, how do I get entertained? Mid frequency. Okay. I'm feeling good about myself. I could go out today. If I feel like I need to make 10 grand, I can do it. But I'm a little uncertain. High frequency, like, dude, I just generated $100,000 today because I chose to. And nothing can stop me. I'm unstoppable. Right. So are you functioning between like, yeah, I'll go to work and I'll make money and, I have a porn addiction? Or are you functioning at like, dude, I'm unstoppable. I'm going to leave a legacy for the rest of my life that people are going to follow. Most of Christ's work that he did was done in 3 years.
Got it.
Right. That we read about. Has the last 3 years of your life been worth talking about for the next 2,000? We're still talking about him. And that's high frequency. High frequency is how do we level up as men to such a level that we're not broken by trends. We're not broken by, and it hurts, and I get it, but we're not broken by women leaving us. It could be devastating if we give it that meaning. We're not broken because somebody gets an office that you like or don't like. You can be annoyed by those things. They can be frustrating, but they shouldn't break you as a man because you have a mission and your mission matters. God made you important. You have to do things that are going to exist beyond whatever the challenges that you're struggling with right now. God still has a calling for you. He wants you to get those things done. You got to do them. And you can't do it if you're making one thing in your life your worship. Right? Like, and it can't be here. You were meant for something greater than this earth. And I believe that every man, woman, and child, before they came to this earth, they existed. And they picked the life that they were going to go into to refine them to be the person they're supposed to be on the other side. Because if you think about it, if you were a spiritual entity and you were like, man, I want to create worlds and I have this power within me to actually do, oh, but I'm lacking this thing. Well, then you got to go work on that. So life becomes training. And as you go into the training experience of life, you start learning how to build patience, how to build resilience, how to build tenacity, how to build self-confidence. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So we talk about a lot of that inside of the Uncaged Masterclass. And for your listeners, if they want to go to that, it's shockwavedefense.com/uncaged, all one word. And they can jump in, they can get that, and it's free. It's a great element to help individuals that want to go in and better themselves as human beings. So, finding your true warrior self is the key.
No, that's perfect. Well, thanks for that. I guess before we kind of end, I figure we can kind of see if anybody, I haven't done many live streams, but I figure we could see if anybody wants to ask any questions. If they do, they can ask and, we can answer anything. So we'll give everyone a minute or two, see if they want to ask any questions. I think it kind of pops up in the bottom hand. So if anybody has anything, happy for Michael to kind of jump in.
Victimhood is not a promotion and not 100%. Yeah, good call. Good phrase. What questions do you guys have for us? We got about 5 minutes here. Show us your mirror. Oh, show you my mirror? Yeah, I'll do that. Come on, let's go. I'll show you my crazy mirror. You guys will get a kick out of this. I'm not going to show you everything that's written on it. Some of that's private, but I'm going to show you my crazy mirror. This is part of what I do every single morning, is come in here and let that embed into the subconscious mind. It's got a ton of writing on it.
Love it.
And if you guys, I'll give you this too, just since you guys see something. This was given to me by the 512th Rescue Squadron, which I thought was pretty cool because I trained them. And then this one here was from the guys in Japan. I taught them how to fight on both of those aircraft. So that's a little exciting thing too. So now you got my mirror and some of my artwork hung up in the house.
Someone just asked, what's the best heli aviation school in ABQ to go to?
So what I would tell you is if you guys want to go to a really great aviation school, what you should probably do is go to Arizona. In quantum helicopters is phenomenal. I own a Robinson Robinson R44. I would definitely, I would go to Arizona. That's a better approach.
Well, I've actually been in a helicopter once in my life, but I've always wanted to learn how to fly. But I heard learning how to fly is not easy in the UK because the weather's so bad. So it's like hard to learn.
Learning how to fly is hard altogether, dude. Like it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Learning
Mm,
how to fly a helicopter, and now I'm so proud of it. It's also one of the most freeing things that you can do in your life.
I can imagine. It sounds. I don't even know I heard you talking about your helicopter. I don't even know what that means, what type it is, or even what it looks like. But it sounds
It's a
amazing.
four-seater. It's a four-seater. It's not huge. It's a semi-rigid system, teeters and flaps. So I mean, you got to be careful with like mass bumping and stuff like that. So you can't do low G pushovers. But if you've ever seen like the ones that they use in the military films, like the MD
Mm,
500, that factory is actually out here in Arizona. Also, I was supposed to go for my birthday, and then I was thinking maybe I'll go in December. I'm going to go. I'm leaving for Costa Rica again, but when I come back, I'm going to go there and take a tour of their facility because I really want an MD 500. Those things are badass. Right. I feel like such a nerd right now because I'm like,
huh.
oh my gosh, yeah, that's so cool. But like what got me into helicopters was seeing Airwolf as a kid, and I fell in love with them. And the freedom that you have where you can just go wherever you want, land on whatever you want, as long as you have permission and it's not like a preserve, you know. There's so many cool things to them. You have to come out here and I'll take you up in the helicopter.
Definitely. That sounds awesome. I love that.
Any
Well,
other questions?
I didn't see anything. Someone said Costa Rica's awesome. I heard someone said, how did gardeners become warriors during the feudal times? I don't know how to answer that question.
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if
I
you
know
have
how
any
to
idea.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I know how to answer that, but what I would say is that like necessity creates change,
Mm,
right? So gardeners become warriors when people are trying to kill them. And it's good to like you don't want to wait to become a warrior until you have to learn that. What I would encourage is like become a warrior first and then go garden, right? That way if you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But that doesn't mean that you got to be this person that can't laugh and go play with puppies. Like you got to kick a dog every time you see it. Like that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you got to be a warrior and you're fully capable and competent to be unstoppable. Like Shockwave, we do three things really, really well. Number one, we sit down and we say, okay, guys, we want you to have confidence. And people go, why confidence? Because it makes you feel good. Two, I want you to have the skills capable to be unstoppable in any scenario in life. And then three, a brotherhood that you can count on.
mm.
The men in our group are there for you through and through. And I love that about them. It's just like those type of bonds you can't really get anywhere else.
There's another question
What do
that came.
you
One more question is, what do you recommend in terms of aligning our true potential with target goals and distinguishing the difference between those and other day-to-day objectives and finding the true purpose?
there should look your day-to-day objective, and this is
Mm,
I think this is something that you see a lot of in our world is that people go, yeah, I want to live my dreams, but I still got to pay my bills. And I think the right way of looking at it is figure out what your dreams are and quit everything else because now you'll be forced to make it work, right?
mm,
Guys, I used to be homeless, and it sucked. It was unpleasant, but it teaches you to push through. You can't be afraid of losing what you have because losing what you have isn't what you want anyway. Like, yeah, but I got to eat. I got to pay rent. Okay, so here's my thing then. Go get yourself a storage shed, live in your storage shed, get yourself a gym membership and shower at the gym and put all your other effort into your dreams because nothing the more you justify why you're not doing what you feel you should be doing is what's going to kill you your dreams. It's what's going to
mm.
keep you from becoming that. So everything that you want to do, go 100% in because we tell ourselves we can't. I was in Costa Rica like a week and a half ago and I was like, man, this is beautiful. This is actually what I've always wanted. Like I've never been in a place in my life where I was like, I want to live here until I went to Costa Rica.
Mm.
There's waterfalls, there's the ocean, there's the beach, there's iguanas walking around, there's like fucking monkeys everywhere, right? And I was just like, this is awesome. I want a monkey, right? And then part of my head was like, oh, you can't have this. And I thought, why? Like, where's that even coming from? Yes, I can. I can. So I'm getting an apartment in Costa Rica, and I'm going to be living in Costa. I'm going to get an apartment out there, and then I'm going to probably eventually get a house there. And I was
Nice.
thinking of leaving Scottsdale, and I talked to my buddy this past weekend on Sunday, and he's like, "Don't." He's like, your place is badass, dude. He's like, stay here. This is wicked. Just bounce back and forth. And we just talked about it. He's like, change the energy, do this. And I was like, man, I love it. So my whole thing is like, you should live a limitless life. And the only way you can do that is by understanding that you're made in the image of your maker. And you got to be plugged into the energy source. You got to have a relationship with God, or you're just going to drown out your energy. You're going to everything's going to suck the life out of you. Business, taxes, relationships, everything. So what do you have to do to live that life that this young man said? Dude, go for your dreams, brother. If you are excited about life and you want to go live life and you're like, man, I want to live life, but people are telling me I can't or whatever. Do you know how many people told me I can't do what I'm doing right now? Everyone. I had a guy tell me once, he was like, man, you couldn't, he made 20 grand in a day. And I think at the time I was like 20 or 21. And I got so excited. I'm like, man, I can't wait till that's me one day. And he's all, you can't, it'll never happen. And I was like, dude, why would you tell that to me? He goes, I just don't want you to get disappointed. And I was like, fuck you. And I just went balls to the wall for a year. Within 1 year, I had a day where I made like 24 or 30 grand in one day. And I was going to go back and tell him, but I didn't care anymore because he was exactly what I needed. Right. And then I've had days where I sit down and I've had days where I made 100 grand in a day. And I'm like, awesome. I want to do more of this. Right. Like, it's not about money. It's just about the belief system of learning that you are the currency.
Totally.
You believe in you, you can do anything. And when people go, oh, well, you just got to believe in God. Dude, you're not going to believe in something that you've never seen if you don't believe in the thing that actually created you to believe in yourself first. How can you believe in something outside of you if you're not believing in what's inside of you, what's already been put there? It is your responsibility as a man to be a success and to leave a legacy. And I think we had one more. People have telling us their dreams.
I was going to say, it actually goes really well with what you said.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Dude, and people tell you that your dreams aren't possible because they're envious. And let me tell you guys something else. And I found this out with a lot of people. They try to crap on your dreams and break you down because you living your dreams and achieving is showing what they're not doing. They have the same capability. They have the same capability that you do, but they're lazy. And so what they want to do is tell you you can't do it because when you do it, you're showing that they're lazy. You're showing that it is possible. And they want to pretend that it's not because they want to sit back and sip on their margarita or whatever. And they're like, yeah, life just sucks. You know, like all women are bad. All men are evil, whatever their story is. And the reality is it's not true, right? Like you create reality. Circumstances are the creatures of men. Men are not creatures of circumstances. Without fear, what would you do? If you knew it was impossible to fail, what would you attempt? Become uncaged. That's what that means, right? And that's the mission that I'm pushing. And I would love for your men to understand that. Like, guys, go out there and go freaking get it. And stop caring about what other people. I had a friend a ways ago, and she used to make a comment. She would say, "Dogs don't bark at parked cars." And I was like, "That's true. They only bark at cars that are moving." Be that person that's moving in momentum, driving forward, having the energy to go. Piss people off. Be a disruptor. Let them have their envy. That envy has no power over you. I used to look at like the comment section and I was like, man, there's like 400 comments of people talking shit. And then there's 165,000 likes. And I was like, I'm shifting my focus. I'm looking at the 165,000 likes because people that have stuff to do in their life, they're not sitting there posting on Instagram talking shit. They're actually doing something, right? So when you sit down and you start looking at it, and then you find the people that are like, yeah, man, I'm in. I'm willing to go. And you start building your network, and it just blows out so strong. You actually get excited about living life. And that's what I'd encourage you guys to do. So be blessed. If you guys check out my Instagram channel, you'll see, I think inside my link tree, the Uncaged Masterclass. It's free. I would jump in there and do it. It's going to give you so much value. Brother, thank you so much for letting me be on your call today. Any other questions for me before I jam here? I got to go.
I think we got everything.
The person that said fear, hate, courage, try not to hate. It'll possess you, right? Like just learn how to step into it and like you can detest things, but don't put your, like the problem with the hate is it'll overpower you and it'll hijack your mind. And then you'll get fixated on that. And the RAS will start making you see the things you hate instead of the stuff you love. So really get into the love. All right, guys, man, Jim, so much. Hey, brother, back at you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If you guys have not checked out this guy, go check out his channel. He is phenomenal. He's a great dude. And I feel very blessed to be on this. I got to go. I love you guys. Be safe.
Have a good one, Michael. Thanks for joining.
You
Bye-bye.
got it.